takeaways here are how XR is changing education, how NFTs will change education, and how you can utilize Web3 technology in general today if you're in the education space or training at a company in any type of education scenario. So before we jump into that, a little bit more background on myself. As Tamika mentioned, I'm the CEO of XpertVR. I'm also a Brock University business graduate, currently part of the largest institution-based incubator or accelerator in the world at Ryerson DMZ. I'm also the director of the Immersive Learning Research Network in the Canadian chapter, so helping educate all kinds of academic institutions across Canada on immersive technology. And outside of the work I do in the virtual reality Web3 Metaverse space, I just love to play and enjoy virtual reality. So I have a team in Population 1, which is basically Fortnite, but for VR, and we won the Community Cup last summer. So yeah, I live and breathe this type of technology and these topics. And a little background on XpertVR. As you can see here, we work with all kinds of academic institutions, and that's why I'm talking about the education space. That said, we do work with larger organizations as well to help training. So really, education isn't just for academics. It doesn't end when you're done college, university. It's all throughout your life. So a couple words and terms that I'll be using throughout this presentation are VR, AR, MR, and XR. So to quickly go over those, virtual reality is like you can see on the left here, where you're completely immersed inside the virtual world, or just like you can see behind me in the background here. Augmented reality is when you're layering a piece of that virtual world on top of the real world, like you can see in this photo here. Mixed reality is kind of that next step up. So same as AR, but adding real world physics. So let's say you put a bouncy ball on a table, a virtual bouncy ball, on a table, and you hit it, it would roll to the end of the table and then bounce on the ground, even though it's virtual in the physical sense there. And then XR, or extended reality, is just the term that encompasses all of these. And then the metaverse, or Web3 or Web 3.0, there's a lot of different terms, as well as like the Oasis and different things along those lines. But I think metaverse, Web3 are kind of the two main ones. And I look at these as being the same. Basically, it is the next evolution of the internet, and where we're heading to having full 3D worlds and 3D interaction through the internet, as well as embedding all kinds of new technologies like blockchain and better integrating AI and all these different technologies, just to make every aspect of our internet interactions that much more enjoyable and fruitful. So XR, common misconceptions that if you've tried VR or in any sense in the past, you might have some of these misconceptions, that it's poor quality, causes motion sickness, maybe the headsets are clunky, or that it's just for gamers and geeks or just for entertainment. And this couldn't be farther from the truth. There's headsets now that have 8K plus resolution and are built to ensure that there isn't any motion sickness. The headset weight has come down to way under a pound and is going to continue to come down over the coming years. And just in the education market alone, it's $13 billion projected by 2026. So definitely not just for gamers and geeks. And you can see here the metaverse market in general is going to be over $1.5 trillion by 2030 if PwC prediction comes true. So why is VR an important e-learning tool? Well, first, or to take a step back, PwC did a study on virtual learning in a VR headset versus regular e-learning tools versus the classroom tools. And what they found was really exciting to see where education could head. So first, they found that education in VR had students 4 times more focused going through the virtual training, the virtual learning, than the classroom environment. it had them 275% more confident to apply the skills that they learned after training. And to further compare this, they were able to do it in four times faster than the classroom learning style. And students had a much more emotional connection to the learning content, which is especially helpful in areas where you're learning soft skills and ethics and EDI and things along those lines. So how is XR being used in education? Well, there's kind of four different types or levels of VR, and I'll run through this part quickly because there's a few slides, but there's virtual classroom platforms, then there's pre-built or off-the-shelf simulations, zero code editors, and custom simulations. So these virtual classroom platforms, there's all kinds of different ones. We really enjoy Spatial as kind of a professional space. Engage is built for learning, but then there's all kinds of other different ones. I would say there's hundreds by now, but just listing a few here. And basically this is a pre-built space that whether you're on a computer, whether you have a VR headset, you can just jump in and have a 3D avatar that you're able to interact with your coworkers or your other students or your peers, whoever it may be, in real time in this 3D space. And because it's 3D, you're able to bring in text, audio, video files just like you would on Zoom like we have right now, but then you can also bring in 3D files. So if you're having a meeting about training for we do a lot of police training. So if you're having a meeting about training for how to handle a domestic violence call that's come in, you can have like the virtual house in front of you to like plan out your strategy in your learning before you actually go in there. So many different things for bringing in whatever you can really imagine in 3D to interact there. A lot of students and schools have been using this to go to Mars or go to other places as well that can kind of be built into these 3D learning platforms. Then second, we have these pre-built simulations. So these are great if you have a specific use case and you can find something that's already ready for students to use out there. So a couple examples, if you're learning about anatomy, there's Organon. So this allows you to see from skin level all the way down to the skeleton, everything about humans' anatomy. Body Swaps allows you to have difficult conversations like how to fire somebody, or in ethical scenarios or EDI scenarios. There was a recent one released here in partnership with a school here in Ontario, all about racism and how to handle different conflicts in the workplace that are related to racism. Ourselves here at XpertVR, like I mentioned, do a lot of police training. So this is one of our simulations where you can go into a domestic dispute and you have to de-escalate the scenario. And then beyond what these simulations are actually built for, you can sometimes use them for other scenarios. So we like to use Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes a lot. This is kind of a fun game that you might have played on your computer or on your PS4 or PS5, where basically you have to defuse a bomb, and you being in the headset or in front of the TV, you don't have the instructions on how to defuse the bomb. So your teammates and your friends have to read those instructions and relay them to you. And this has been really great for leadership skills, communication skills, and things along those lines. So a great option if you have a use case and you can find a simulation that's pre-built for that use case. Then the third option is like zero code editors. So basically, this is something that if you have no coding skills or hardly any like tech skills, I'm a business guy, I don't have any coding or huge tech skills, and I use these. You basically jump in and you can create basic simulations. A lot of them are around conversations. So you can train people through having these branching dialogue systems. So basically you go up to an avatar, and it has 4 options. Do you say hello? Do you yell at them? Do you walk away? Or do you jump straight into a conversation? That's probably a bad example, but you get what I mean. There's 4 options, and once you select one, the avatar will respond accordingly, and then you'll have 4 more options, and it keeps doing this like branching dialogue of where the conversation could go. And so this is just a great way for learning soft skills as well without needing too much experience to build out these types of simulations. And then lastly, if one of those pre-built simulations that are out there, or a custom, or the zero code editor doesn't solve what you're trying to teach or educate, or you have a very specific use case at your workplace maybe that you're trying to train people on, there's custom simulations. So by us, but there's also many other companies out there that are amazing, and we even refer to some of them depending on the use case. But with these kinds of simulations that you can see in the video here, they're completely customizable, really down to the last blade of grass inside of the environment. So whatever you need, it can be created, and you can design every second of that scenario. So if you want X, Y, and Z to happen in a certain order, that can happen through working with a custom development team. It can also allow you to collect data and send that back to your learning management system, or email it to your employees, or all kinds of different things with the data that's collected. And lastly, making sure the right accessibility features are put in just in general, or maybe specifically for people inside of your workplace. I say AODA, that's like the Ontario accessibility, because I'm up in Ontario, Canada. And just to quickly give some examples of that, data collected through VR. This is eye tracking data that we've worked with a really cool company out of Vancouver, Cognitive 3D. And basically here, it goes beyond the regular data tracking and training, where you might just take some surveys afterwards or check the answers that people gave, but you can see where somebody was looking. So if you're training somebody on how to work at heights, maybe they need to look and double check that their harness is put together correctly and attached to the right places correctly. So having this kind of data tracked so that you can see that they actually did that and maybe grade them or give them feedback on what they actually did can be highly beneficial. It's also interesting with biofeedback, so you can know how confident they were through either their heart rate or through the dilation of their pupils even now, confidence levels, if they were nervous, what other emotions they were feeling. And then as well, just having regular surveys and regular, or not regular, but path tracking to know how they went throughout the training. And I had costs on all the other things. So to briefly go over costs, as you saw, the kind of off-the-shelf ones can start from, or the all the other options that I gave there, start from free, go up to maybe $1,000 at most. Obviously, custom development, you're getting it very custom for you. So this can go up to $95,000 or $150,000 plus, depending on all the features that you want. So how would you implement it at your workplace? I'm just going to check the time here. All right, we're doing all right. Perfect. So a couple questions you'd want to ask yourself if you're applying this at your workplace or at your institution or whatever use case you have. First, you're going to want to ask, do you have the skills in-house? So do you have a development team that could develop what you're looking for? Or at the least, do you have somebody in IT that could handle the implementation of this project? How many projects are you pursuing? Are you just going to start with a pilot project? Are you sold on virtual reality as an education tool and you see your peers or other companies or other institutions you're working with using it? And do you want to just launch like 3, 4, 5 projects at the same time? Do you have the budget to support that? And do you have the support of the person who signs all the checks for the budget? Obviously important. Where will VR have the most impact? Especially if you're only doing a pilot study, you want to see what classes are going to benefit most from VR. How realistic does the simulation need to be? as you kind of may have seen in some of the pictures I showed there, realism and going from kind of the cartoony to exactly like real life does vary in simulations. So understanding what are your learning objectives and what you're trying to get out of the simulation that you're building, and do you need super high realism to get those learning objectives, because it's easier for developers to create less realistic simulations. But if you need them to be super realistic, then you need to make that clear. And overall, is your team aligned? So with that, you are going to want to select your A team within your institution or your organization. You don't necessarily need everybody here, but these are people that we normally see getting together when we're starting a project. So like I mentioned, somebody from IT to make sure implementation is done correctly, preferably somebody that is interested in VR and excited about implementing VR. Somebody that's a pedagogy expert and knows what are the learning outcomes and how to make sure those come through in the simulation. A funding decision maker, so who's going to sign those checks and make sure this is approved. Having them involved from the start just makes everything go a lot smoother. Development teams, like I said, whether that's in-house, a contracted development team like XpertVR, or looking at those off-the-shelf solutions and the companies that make those. Industry experts, so likely if you're trying to teach something inside of your institution or your organization, you're going to have the experts in-house that can relay what is needed to the development team or to the people making the selection of what off-the-shelf simulation to use. But there's also a lot of contractors out there that can work with you depending how busy your own experts are. And then lastly, who's going to be the final user, whether it's a student or trainee or somebody else, having them involved, hopefully right from the start or sometime throughout the approval process of the simulation that you're trying to get built or approve, ensures that they're going to utilize it and that they're actually excited for this to be implemented at your workplace or at your institution. All right, so that was kind of the whole VR, XR accessing the Metaverse Web3 side of things. So I wanted to jump into NFTs and crypto, kind of the other side, the underlying technology that could be very interesting in education. And like I said, XR is kind of, or like some of the examples I showed, XR is already kind of being used in the education space, both in institutions, academic institutions, and enterprise organizations. But NFTs are just starting to come into the space. So when I say NFTs or crypto, you might think of some of these pictures here, like Dogecoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin, or NFTs like Lazy Lions or World of Women or CryptoPunks or Bored Ape Yacht Club, and you just see these crazy pictures, especially this Bored Ape Yacht Club here, the mutant ape. You see these crazy pictures and you're like, what the hell is this? How does this tie into education at all? And really, you see that, and I completely understand why you might think that, but done properly, an NFT is building a community around a common goal and idea. It has some utility that gives either exclusive access or exclusive benefits to the people that hold that NFT. And it potentially it's represented by fun art. So the art is kind of, at least in my mind and how it should be used in education, is the afterthought. It is what the technology of blockchain allows you to do, and then the art of the NFT is just to make it a little more fun and to make it easier to understand, I guess. So some examples of this. If you're ever heard of Gary Vaynerchuk, he released his VFriend. So just a couple of weeks ago, his VFriend NFT was the access token to his conference that he held. So the only way to get into this conference was by holding the NFT. Throughout the year, They've also given out gifts to people that own the NFT, meetups with Gary Vee so that you can either just have a conversation with him, go to dinner with him, go sit courtside to a basketball game, so all kinds of other benefits. And Full Send is another influencer group, and they've done something very similar with having their NFT really just as a token to get access to the benefits they offer. Fly Fish Club, also by Gary Vee actually, and is a restaurant in New York that you need an NFT to get into. MasterCard is starting to work with crypto so that you can exchange and pay with crypto. Disney and Marvel both have NFTs they've been releasing. There's fun new games that are coming out where this one is Chicken Derby and you can race chickens, but you need an NFT of your chicken to race it. Stoner Cats is by Mila Kunis, and I believe Ashton Kutcher is also involved. And basically, by releasing this NFT, you now have access to the IP behind the cartoon that they're making and releasing the show. Budweiser is in the space, and there's all kinds of other companies. In the education space, there's a couple of really interesting ways it's being used. First, MIT is using it or testing NFTs as a way to verify that people have gotten the degree that they're looking for, finish the class that they went through to do. And hopefully in the future with this, and as well with what Duke University and Coursera are doing, very similar in approving the courses that you did and the degree that you got, instead of needing a resume, then a new employer could just look up your NFT or crypto wallet and see all of the classes that you've taken, the course that you've gotten. And because it's on the blockchain, there's no way that somebody could fake that or get that without actually going through the course. On the more like crypto, away from the NFT side, here in Ontario, the Public School Board Association, a couple schools are actually using crypto to teach young students about financial literacy. So by doing good things in class, you get some cryptocurrency. They're not allowed to buy or sell it outside of the school. It's like in this contained space. But then once the cryptocurrency supply gets down to a certain level, this shopping market opens up and they're allowed to buy a pizza party or buy like some extra time at recess or things along those lines. And it kind of ties into all the lessons that they're teaching about financial literacy. So how would you implement these NFTs in crypto to your institution or organization? So probably going with something that is very low cost if you want to go the crypto idea that I was just talking there about rewards. So Banano is a great option, very great community that is helpful. And with Banano, B-A-N-A-N-O, just like banana, but with an O, with this type of technology, you can do those ideas, and whether that be for students in a class or if you have employees that you're trying to reward and collect those or keep track of those rewards using something like this cryptocurrency. Then there's things like on the NFT side, there's all kinds of different sites. I have Manifold, Inevitable, and Third Web listed here that allow you to create NFTs very cheaply, if not for free. So a great way to test out the NFT space if you're making your first NFTs. And then if you get into it more and you want something very custom and super safe and not kind of a shared smart contract, I won't get into what smart contracts are exactly, but it's what allows those benefits to happen. And so if X happens, then the smart contract will execute on Y and allow Z to happen. To put it kind of basically. So each of these platforms have their own smart contracts, but you can get a developer to develop your own to launch these. So in the education space, I think a great example is like what MIT and Duke are doing, where you get an NFT for graduating or for finishing a certain class. But then I think it's interesting to add other benefits onto that. So 10 years down the road, all of the alumni that got that NFT of the 2022 graduating year, they would get some benefit or an invite to a special party, or it would say send them a form and say put in what city you live in, and maybe there's a big population that live in Boston by MIT and they still live there, and it says, okay, we're going to have this special 2022 reunion just for the people here in Boston, and there's like a special party, but we're also going to then put on another one next month in New York or something along those lines. So being able to add all those other benefits on top of the NFT in the future. So I see a couple of questions have come up in the chat and QA there, so I will check on those now. Hopefully I kind of got through everything and gave a brief enough examples that you could still understand everything that I was touching on. But always happy to talk on LinkedIn, Evan Sitler-Bates. If you want to check out what we do at XpertVR, expertvr.ca, and then as well, there's my email and phone number if you want to chat further than just LinkedIn. But let's look at the QA. I think we have, got a couple minutes. Perfect. All right, Alicia, have you considered holographic amusement and headset-free immersive experiences post-COVID? I think the holographic space is really interesting, and I know Disney World has filed some patents for holographic amusement parks. So I think it's really cool at that kind of scale, but I think it's only possible for places like Disney World that can afford to have that setup that's running throughout the year, versus having entertainment experiences that are in a VR headset that can be shared with anybody that owns a VR headset. And headsets have come down to the price of $299 in USD. So like having that as an accessible option that anybody can have a VR headset at home and share with their friends, I think is much more interesting. But it would be cool, and I'm really excited to see what Disney does in that kind of space. How may this be advantageous for environmental law enforcement training? Curious to know what you mean exactly by environmental, if that's just like the environment they're working in or something more actually tied to the environment, but very advantageous. We do a lot of work right now in like crime scene investigation and soft skills of de-escalation. So we're training police officers. If you go in and there's a mother and a son fighting, a couple fighting, somebody's having some kind of mental health crisis, how do you go into those scenarios and communicate with those people and de-escalate with them properly? So being able to do that in a virtual space where the avatars are responding to you and they look like they're in an actual scenario that you'd be put in is definitely much more advantageous and a better area to train when compared to how police train today, where somebody kind of just pretends to be that person as in a peer role-playing game, and maybe just has a sign that says what type of person they are, if they're what age they are, or anything along those lines. So having that is huge, as well as there's a lot of companies that are teaching more on like gun and taser usage, and the actual inventor of the taser, Axon, they have a whole training course in VR. So I think it's really interesting, when do you pull out these types of equipment, when to use them, and making sure that officers don't think that that's the first option that they have to use.
Amazing, amazing, Evan. Thank you for answering those questions. I will say that I feel a lot more comfortable hearing these different terms now, because, this is still a brand new world for people like me that haven't really immersed themselves in learning more about NFTs and VR, MR, AR, and all the stuff. I know about VR. Have never owned any of the equipment, but I was excited to listen to you present today. This has been very informational.
Well, yeah, no, thank you for having me, Tamika, and I'm glad that you learned something from it. And yeah, you'll definitely have to either pick up a headset or find a friend that has one, or there's all kinds of like VR arcades that are popping up, and that's where I got my first experience, and it's great to try it out.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you again for your presentation. You all, this has been Evan Sitler-Bates who has given us a great presentation. And he is the co-founder and CEO of XpertVR. Thank you, Evan.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for tuning in.